Tom graduated from Bellarmine in 1963, which makes him almost as old as I am. He graduated from Santa Clara with a BA in 1967, MA in 1970. He's described in Wikipedia as an author, businessman, teacher. He works with the Sharks. He is in business downtown. Unfortunately, he does not qualify for our group because he has 3 daughters, but I'm going to recommend to the board that we make him an honorary member. Please join me in welcoming Tom again.
That was one of the most poorly prepared introductions I've heard in a long time. Yeah, I do have 3 daughters. I used to tell Jerry Wade when they were debating whether to let girls in here, I said, you know, these girls are really good athletes. Remember that, Jerry? You know, they went on quite well to prove it. A couple of state championships, a couple of NorCal championships, and Jerry after that said, God, you know, we would have had some great girls teams if your daughters would have come here. I said, girls teams? They would have been starting point guards on the boys team. So, yeah, it's fun to come back here. You know, I'm often asked in the past to speak at luncheons, sometimes evenings, and even a few breakfasts, but never I've been asked to speak like at 6:30. So I figured I wouldn't get on time, but I was intrigued to come and see what the early bird group looked like. And I knew some of you were quite anxious to get the Sambos for that special. So I'm only going to speak for an hour and a half. You know, you look at the walls and things here, and that's Casca Hall over there, isn't it, Jerry? It is. Yeah. Casca Hall, of course, is where the boarder stayed, and I wasn't not a boarder. I'm very happy to say that. Not a member of the Manson family either, which some people would equate to boarders, but I never really went into Casca Hall till one night. I forget who it was, Bo Rogers or something said, why don't you stop by there? And I'd never been in there, you know, maybe I was a junior. And I walked in there, and it was the most bizarre. First of all, half the lights were out. You heard different noises coming from different rooms. I mean, the only thing that didn't happen is Freddy Krueger didn't pop out there. And I used as a line, which I'll try again here this evening, they asked about Casca Hall, and I said, well, let me describe it this way. If Saddam Hussein had been hiding in there instead of the spider hole he was pulled out of, he would have surrendered on his own. Still kind of works a little bit. And Birchman Hall, which of course Jerry and I refer to as the Paul Hemus house, right? Why do we refer to it as that? Well, first of all, it makes us feel like we know something nobody else does. That was originally the home of guess who? I know some of you being Bellarmine graduates in general education, I will explain that was the Paul Hemus family that they named the Paul Hemus house after, but now it's known as, was it always Birchman?
It was St. John Birchman, yeah.
Jerry, you want to finish this up? And I miss the old gym over there. I don't know why, because I had so many miserable experiences on the basketball team there. They just assumed because my brother was a really good basketball player. Tony Pelosi is a wonderful guy. He didn't know much about basketball, but he assumed that I'd be a pretty good player too, which one of the many assumptions he made during some of those seasons that didn't quite work out. But that gym was probably, if you were a really good player and you had to suit up in that gym before you went out on the court, you would be so bummed out by the time you got there. There used to be like about a half an inch of dirt in the locker room. I guess that was from the football team. Of course, the football season had ended in December, and this would be in February, and they still had a half an inch of dirt there. Was Brother Hubert in charge of the cleanup? So when I come here, you always think of Irish and Italians. I don't know why, probably as I told Father Sheridan. When you look at the list of presidents of Bellarmine, about 80% of them were Irish, including, of course, Father Sheridan. And the Irish and Italians always had a dynamic here. So I'm pulling out the old Winston Churchill story. On the eve of World War II, Churchill was not prime minister, but he was attending a party with the German ambassador. And the German ambassador, very much trying to impress Churchill, used some of his, what he thought were the most powerful arguments. He said, if another war were to come, Germany has this tremendous might. Our industrial strength will be able to produce so many planes and so many tanks and things. And Churchill just puffed on his cigar and said, well, I think we'll be able to handle that. And the ambassador, German ambassador, was a little bit nonplussed, and he said, what the German fighting man, the Prussian military tradition, Mr. Churchill, the British Tommy just can't stand up to that type of military man. And Churchill said, well, we did okay when we stumbled into Berlin in 1918. So finally the German ambassador, very frustrated, said, if another world war comes, Mr. Churchill, this time Italy will side with us. And Churchill took a sip of his brandy and said, that seems quite fair, sir. We had them last time. For all the great things about the Italians, it's a slim volume that great Italian military heroes. So, I pulled out a speech here, and it starts, dear citizens of San Jose, thank you for electing me mayor. So I guess I pulled out the wrong one, but it does have one interesting thing. There was a recent poll that showed that the #1 fear of the American public is public speaking. It's kind of incredible I think most of you are pretty talkative people, I've noted. I like to talk. The #1 fear is public speaking. What's really amazing is #2 is death. number 2 is death, #1 is public speaking. So you got to get this straight. In a situation for the majority of Americans in this poll, at a funeral they'd rather be the corpse than the guy giving the eulogy. Frank, thank you for showing up. I used to actually get paid for speeches. I know it's hard to believe, particularly. I think they almost tried to charge me $25 here tonight. But, I'm not paying my usual. I did some public speaking when I finished being mayor, and they actually paid me, $7,000, $8,000 for a speech. So I'm absolutely, not afraid of any public speaking. But if there's any chance, if you kind of enjoy it a little bit, if you get. If you could maybe come up with a few $100. I think it'd be a nice touch. You know what I was going to say, I wasn't sure it would work out that well. I was going to talk about my class 1963, which was far superior to Skip's class in 1961, but I always kind of hoped that I would be selected as the valedictorian. Now, I had about a 2.5 grade point. I was a fairly mediocre, bad basketball player, but I thought they should have given me a little bit of a shot. So, some of the things that I thought about, and I pulled that speech out too, is what I would have said in 1963. I never could get the hang of physics, so I couldn't figure out how to operate the slide rule very well for Father Franklin. So one of the things I was going to say, because I was kind of certain of this, that there would be an invention someday in my lifetime that would absolutely make the slide rule obsolete. It would be a calculator, it would be formed by, it's hard to believe, a microprocessor that some of us would refer to as a chip. This is 1963. I was all prepared to say this. It would totally change the way we look at the world, and it would allow all kinds of marvelous new inventions. I also was going to say that day that in my lifetime, a young man from a minority group that had been very downtrodden would one day be elected president, and that it would give tremendous pride and a place of, I think, a place that they well deserve to Italian Americans across the country. And I think I came kind of close on this one, because Mario Cuomo almost made it. His son Andrew still has a shot. So I also predicted that day, but I'm probably getting a little bit off the subject here, that We really should put our faith and confidence in the banking system of this country. There are more good people going into banking, and this is 1963.